It's the nation's most cherished and respected children's hospital.
I think for children, I think you can't go better than that, really.
I just think they do some really great work.
But we reveal that all is not well at this famous institution.
I have thought it the most wonderful place in the world, and now I do not.
Tonight we uncover how Great Ormond Street's management created a culture of bullying and victimisation.
We were almost told off, like you tell of children, saying that don't be so dramatic, don't be so histrionic.
Tried to bury a report that revealed a clinically risky situation.
It was an accident waiting to happen in that clinic.
And in the case of baby Peter, shifted the blame.
Health had a very large responsibility, and I think health got off relatively scot-free.
Now politicians are calling on the hospital to put its house in order.
Great Ormond Street have the responsibility to put things right, and I hope they do it fast, and I hope they do it openly.
We ask why this has been allowed to happen. Is Great Ormond Street simply too important to fail? Great Ormond Street is one of the most famous children's hospitals in the world. Its work captures the hearts and minds of the British public.
We're running for Great Ormond Street Hospital, a good charity.
With a PR machine second to none, it's one of the most donated to children's charities in the UK.
I've raised about £500 and hopefully the company I work for, Microsoft, are going to match that.
Receiving £53 million last year alone.
I've raised £100 for Great Ormond Street.
Got about 200 quid so far.
Under the slogan, "The child first and always," Great Ormond Street Hospital has become an international brand. But behind the golden image and the well-oiled fundraising machine, there are concerns among eminent medical professionals at the lengths to which Great Ormond Street Hospital will go to protect their precious reputation.
There are certainly concerns around the country within paediatrics and paediatric radiology that the system at Great Ormond Street is not what it should be.
Christine Hall was a radiologist at Great Ormond Street for over 30 years before retiring. She was one of just a few specialists in the country highly trained to recognise the difference between child abuse cases and rare genetic bone conditions. When a decision was made not to appoint further experts in this field, staff felt these vital skills were being lost.
There was another edict issued that everybody would do everything in the department. So dumbing down everybody's level of expertise, and if I may say so, at the same time compromising patient care. We can see the obvious fracture, which is quite a severe one.
Yeah, it appears fresh.
These concerns are shared by radiologist Karen Rosendahl. Since she left the hospital, she feels that children are no longer receiving the high-quality service they should be because staff don't have the level of expertise that's needed in this area.
I have concerns about children's safety. When I came to Great Ormond Street in 2005, we were 3 radiologists with a special interest in MSK. And at present, there's none. So that's really concerning. One particular case, misdiagnosed, had the wrong sort of treatment, for example. Another case, misdiagnosed for abuse, wasn't abuse.
Are you aware of cases that have...
I am, yes. I think that there have been mistakes there, yes.
Why do you say that?
Because I'm aware of patients that have suffered.
Great Ormond Street say they take concerns raised by staff very seriously and have found no evidence of any risk to patients. Certainly compromising patient safety, misdiagnosis and a lack of expertise are not things you associate with this world-class institution. But this isn't the first time Great Ormond Street Hospital have come in for criticism.
Great Ormond Street has the most phenomenal reputation as a foremost children's hospital, so one treads very carefully about even beginning to think that things might not be correct. But in the end, you have to speak out for the children. You can't say, I mustn't damage a reputation.
Great Ormond Street has just achieved Foundation Trust status. That gives them greater independence, allowing them to continue as a centre of excellence for children. It was the desire for this which first led them from their state-of-the-art hospital here in Bloomsbury to one of the most deprived communities in Britain. Haringey has one of the highest levels of child poverty in the country. After the death of Victoria Climbié, this borough had struggled to recruit top doctors. So when a partnership was struck, where Great Ormond Street would step in to recruit and manage all paediatric staff in Haringey, it seemed like the perfect solution.
It looked really exciting. The advert was basically saying, you know, we want people to come and develop high quality paediatric services for the community in Haringey. And as I'd had a lot of experience in developing new services, you know, I thought, great, this is the sort of job for me.
Kim Holt was recruited by Great Ormond Street Hospital in 2004 under this new partnership with Haringey. She was part of a team of 4 consultant paediatricians, including Haitham El-Bashir, Sukanta Banerjee and Sethu Warrior.
The Great Ormond Street Hospital has a name internationally. It has the reputation for hosting some of the best doctors of the world. This was the job that came my way at the time, and seeing the label of Great Ormond Street attached to it, I jumped and I got the job.
Much was riding on this partnership for Great Ormond Street itself. In the hospital's own words, it was an integral part of its application for Foundation Trust status.
My expectation was that they would be wanting to put children first. You know, that their aim would be to really bring excellence into the community in Haringey, and the focus would be children.
For Great Ormond Street, dealing with a wide range of child-related issues in the community meant they were venturing into uncharted territory. It was a very different type of service from the work they were famous for. The move came as a surprise to some senior consultants at the hospital.
Great Ormond Street is dedicated to looking after complex patients, children, and they're referred there on the basis of their complexity. Haringey is the local area that deals with general paediatrics, which nobody at Great Ormond Street has experience of.
But before long, serious cracks began to appear. When examining children, doctors would often not be able to access medical records.
You'd see a child and you didn't have the notes, and then obviously you've got to trawl back through with the parent some of the history.
So we don't know whether this child has been admitted a few years ago for broken bones or for, some bruise elsewhere. Has he presented to an A&E locally? We have no information whatsoever about that. It left the doctor who was doing the medicals exposed.
Worried about the gaps in the service and how it was endangering children, all 4 consultants raised their concerns in a co-signed letter to management.
There's no doubting when you read that letter that there were serious concerns about patient safety, but also about the culture. In my opinion, that service wasn't fit for purpose.
We had raised concerns about this disaster that was waiting to happen. It was dysfunctional.
When they felt management failed to respond to their concerns, staff resorted to filling in critical incident forms to report problems in the system. These are designed to preempt major accidents, but managers felt that too many were being filled in.
We were almost told off like you tell of children, saying that don't be so dramatic, don't be so histrionic.
You know, we raised the concerns, I was the most vocal, and a few months later I'm being referred to occupational health, allegedly with mental health problems. So the timing suggests that they were actually targeting me.
Just months after raising these concerns, the named doctor at the clinic, Dr. El-Bashir, resigned. This pivotal position was a key recommendation introduced as a result of the Victoria Climbié inquiry. For a hospital like St Anne's, the named doctor was a fundamental requirement, but Great Ormond Street management failed to fill the role.
The named doctor post is a crucial post for child protection, and it shocked me that in Haringey, after Victoria Climbié, that they actually saw that it was appropriate to cut the named doctor post. It's just unbelievable. We lost that support from within the organisation of somewhere to go if you needed to speak to somebody to get some advice regarding whether you had concerns about a child being abused or not.
In a statement, Great Ormond Street told us,
"A decision was made that Dr Banerjee should take on the essential parts of the named doctor role.
However, the hospital accepts that it
could have planned service issues better around these staffing difficulties."
With no named doctor and patient notes continuously missing, Dr Sethu Warrior felt he had no alternative but to resign and return home to Newcastle.
I thought I couldn't work in an environment like that. That's the reason why I left.
By the end of 2006, this clinic was running on 2 very exhausted consultants and, double the workload that we'd had the year before.
Kim Holt then went off on extended leave, embroiled in a battle with Great Ormond Street over her workload and stress. Of the 4 original consultants recruited, just one remained, Dr Banerjee. She was off with bouts of sickness, so much of the responsibility came to lie with an inexperienced doctor brought in temporarily, Dr Saber Al-Zayat.
It was an accident waiting to happen in that clinic.
The brutal death of a toddler in North London has been described by ministers as a harrowing and tragic
A man and a
case.
woman have been arrested and released on bail by police investigating the suspicious death of a 17-month-old baby boy.
The court had heard that the injuries inflicted on the baby boy, which increased in intensity, would fill any reasonable person with revulsion.
I've decided to take immediate action. Haringey Council will now remove the current Director of Children's Services from her post with immediate effect.
Sharon Shoesmith was sacked along with 4 other social workers, but no one from the management at Great Ormond Street was held to account.
Children's Services and Sharon Shoesmith carried the can. There's no doubt about that. But we certainly are now very clear that health had a very large responsibility. And I think health, got off relatively scot-free.
But was this the whole story? From what people started telling me, this was more than just an overwhelming failure of social work. From leaked documents, talking to whistleblowers and freedom of information requests, it became clear that Great Ormond Street were hiding something, and my reports were prompting others to ask questions about this famous hospital. Last year, the editor of The Lancet, Richard Horton, questioned whether Great Ormond Street Hospital is just too important to be seen to fail, even when a child dies. This was followed a few months later by the British Medical Journal, which asked, Great Ormond Street and Baby P, was there a cover-up? What's emerged is just how far Great Ormond Street management were prepared to go to conceal the full picture about their involvement in the death of baby Peter. It all started when 2 eminent paediatricians, Professor Joseph Seibert and Dr Deborah Hodes, were commissioned by Great Ormond Street to look at the practice of Dr Al-Zayat and St Anne's Clinic, where she worked. What they were to find was toxic for Great Ormond Street, potentially very damaging. The Seibert report, as it became known, outlined not only the failings of Dr Al-Zayat, but also serious concerns at the way this clinic was being run. But the official review into Peter's death never got the full picture, because Great Ormond Street chose to conceal some of the most damaging aspects of this report. The truth remained buried for 2 years. When I learned about this report, I tried to get hold of it through freedom of information requests. Great Ormond Street refused to release it. What are the public interest tests here? It was only after the Information Commissioner intervened that it was finally disclosed a year and a half later. It was immediately clear why Great Ormond Street didn't want this made public. Seibert had uncovered flaws in the whole system, concerns that Great Ormond Street's management had been warned about over a year before Peter's death. The report described St Anne's as clinically risky, saying there were grave concerns with missing notes, too few staff, and crucially, no named doctor. The Seibert report recognised that Dr Al-Zayat, who examined baby Peter 2 days before he died, was inexperienced in child protection. It said she should have been given more training as she didn't meet the core requirements of the job. Great Ormond Street had known that when they employed her.
I've seen the job description for this locum, and she could not actually have been said to fulfil the requirements of that locum post.
Should Great Ormond Street have appointed Dr Al-Zayat?
No. No, they write a job description that says you must have a certificate of completion of training as a consultant, and she did not have that. You're putting the doctor in a position, and the doctor is quite likely to fail.
Great Ormond Street say,
it was felt Dr Al Zayat's experience was sufficient to undertake the locum role in Haringey.
We now know that in the months after baby Peter's death, Great Ormond Street not only gave Dr Al Zayat a positive appraisal, they also offered her a permanent consultant's post here at St Anne's Clinic. But when the hospital received the Seibert report, they cut their own employee loose.
Tonight on BBC London News, the last doctor to examine baby Peter will face a disciplinary panel.
Great Ormond Street made public the shortcomings of Dr Al Zayat by sacking her and reporting her to the General Medical Council, but they minimised their own failings.
There was no way that Dr Al Zayat deserved the scapegoating and the vicious media campaign against her. The doctor got the blame, but the systems seem to have got away with it. I would hope that a hospital like Great Ormond Street would be willing to look where there were serious failings to correct them and wouldn't see themselves as being, above that.
And had they done that in this case?
Well, they hadn't done it in this case, no.
Do you have to think that's a cover-up? Because ultimately, while Dr Al Zayat was clearly failing, so was Great Ormond Street. If they knew all of those things were not at a level that provided safety and security around child protection, then they were at fault. And the fact that didn't come through into the serious case review, why not? Why are they keeping it secret? Those are questions that need to be answered still.
Great Ormond Street told us they had
independent assurance that she was suitable for appointment. Following the Seibert report, it was clear that Dr Al Zayat would not be able to attain the necessary CCT within a practical timescale. The offer was therefore withdrawn.
They go on to say,
it was our clear duty as an employer to raise significant concerns about her clinical practice to the General Medical Council. The Trust does not consider that Dr Al Zayat was made a scapegoat, and the Trust is confident that it acted fairly and proportionately.
Tonight, a BBC London exclusive. The author of the serious case review into the death of baby Peter says she wasn't given crucial facts.
Throughout my investigations, Great Ormond Street have maintained that they withheld key information in the Seibert report for legal reasons.
We believe in being open, always telling the truth and sharing everything we can. One of our problems is we do have responsibilities to our employees as well.
Great Ormond Street has always maintained that the findings of the Seibert report were passed on to the second or final review into Peter's death. But we can now reveal, after months of investigation, that the full failings of Great Ormond Street Hospital never made it into any official inquiry. Over a year after baby Peter's death, the role of Great Ormond Street in the tragedy was re-examined. A second review was carried out by a company called Verita. We've now seen this confidential Verita report and can reveal what it says for the very first time. It purports to be a full assessment of what went wrong, how the health services failed baby Peter. But the key failings of Great Ormond Street Hospital are simply not in it. Great Ormond Street say Verita did receive the full Seibert report. I showed both documents to Ray Jones, an expert in social care, to see whether he thought Seibert's findings were included.
It doesn't give the picture about the difficulties that doctors were having at St Anne's in doing the job they had to do.
Paediatrician Leonard Williams, who has a special interest in child protection, agrees.
You do not read this report and get the same impression as you do from the Seibert report.
Because the Seibert report painted a picture of what?
A clinically risky situation.
Great Ormond Street say Verita did receive the entire Seibert report, and they had been open, providing all necessary information. But reading through Verita, it paints a different picture. Crucially, the report says there was a named doctor, when we know from Seibert that there wasn't. Verita was told staff investment in St Anne's had increased, when a year before the number of consultants was cut from 4 to 3 as part of budget cuts of £350,000. And on the key question of why Dr Al Zayat was appointed, The report says that Great Ormond Street failed to provide the documentation to explain that.
If at any point in time there's been deliberately, if you like, editing and exclusion to make sure that that information doesn't transfer from one stage of the process to another, then that has got to be a cause of concern, because at the end of the day, you've disrupted and destroyed the purpose of the process.
18 months after Peter's death, the country's health regulator took a look at how Great Ormond Street had responded to the tragedy. Even here, the hospital tried to exert pressure. In Plymouth, I met Heather Wood, a former senior investigator for the Care Quality Commission. I showed her correspondence that we'd obtained through Freedom of Information requests between Great Ormond Street and the regulator.
It was a missed opportunity perhaps to hold Great Ormond Street, well, to account really on the face of it.
Emails and letters reveal how the hospital pressurised the regulator not to publish its review containing the Seibert report. Are you surprised to learn that Great Ormond Street wanted this report not to be published?
I think that's very unusual.
In another email, they tried to get Seibert's criticism of Great Ormond Street removed altogether.
Having looked at some of the correspondence that you've shown me, I'm certainly aware that Great Ormond Street was uncomfortable with the publication of the Seibert report. It certainly leaves an impression of an organisation that doesn't want a light shone into particular corners. It doesn't give an impression of an open and transparent organisation that is looking to ensure that lessons are fully learned.
Great Ormond Street say
the Seibert report contained highly confidential information about individual staff and individual children. This information should not be shared in the public domain.
You'd assume the effect of baby Peter's death would have been to make Great Ormond Street rethink its commitment to child protection. And it has, but not in a way you'd imagine. It's now withdrawn from its partnership with Haringey.
Other people might be tempted to say we must improve what we're doing. It seemed to be the opposite case here. They just wanted to withdraw from anything to do with child abuse.
So why, when baby Peter died nearly 5 years ago now, does this still matter? Well, it's important because by trying to hide this information, Great Ormond Street's failings in child protection appear not to have been properly addressed. Since baby Peter's death, child protection in Britain has undergone a radical change. Some say setting it back because the right lessons may not have been learned. The repercussions are still being felt at the hospital today. At Great Ormond Street, radiologists were relied upon to give their expert opinion on child abuse cases to doctors around the country. But in the last few years, a decision has been made to withdraw this service.
I found this quite horrifying. It was an impossible situation to be in, and whoever had dreamt this up obviously had no idea what it involved.
There was an impression, a feeling that the chief executive didn't want radiology to do non-accidental cases anymore.
Child protection cases?
Yes.
Great Ormond Street say they took this action because
the hospital does not have an A&E, and therefore in the department's view it was not an appropriate focus for the radiology department.
But when radiologists in the department raised concerns that Great Ormond Street was failing to put the child first, they felt management weren't listening to them.
There was a culture of fear. If we raised our concern, we were just ignored.
According to some staff at the hospital, there is a culture of fear and bullying within this famous institution. 4 years ago, senior radiologist Dr. Cathy Owens found herself facing an accusation of fraud over claims for reimbursement of the congestion charge. She was made to pay back the money. In 2008, Chief Executive of the hospital, Jane Collins, sent a letter to staff stating that she now considered the matter closed. But rather than being the end, this proved to be just the beginning for Dr. Owens.
Every person I know who's looked at any of the facts would say, what's happened is wrong. They need to put it right.
Supporters of Dr. Owens say she's been the victim of a smear campaign.
This has made her life miserable for the last few years. I think this is pure victimisation of Cathy Owens. My view is that they're trying to persuade, by one means or another, Cathy Owens to resign.
It's a very serious claim to make against a hospital.
It is, yes.
In 2010, Dr. Owens lodged a grievance about her treatment at the hospital. A few weeks later, a complaint was made against her to the General Medical Council.
As soon as the hospital knew that there'd been a referral of Dr. Owens, the hospital should have intervened and said, this is a dead issue. Whatever the rights and wrongs may have been just under 2 years ago, it's not a matter to bring up in public now. It clearly doesn't affect a doctor's fitness to practice. It's been disposed of. They didn't.
But now we've learned the General Medical Council has dropped the case against Dr. Owens, saying there was no prospect of proving dishonesty. Peter Bottomley says the hospital needs to admit they've made a mistake.
The hospital has to act, and if they don't, they will join the group of hospital trusts who, in my view, the Secretary of State and the Select Committee need to investigate if this issue of having good doctors referred to the GMC and the trusts either initiating it or going along with it continues. This is one of the worst cases I've come across.
Great Ormond Street say they tried to resolve the matter informally to avoid disruption in the radiology department. They go on to say,
with the benefit of hindsight, informal resolution may have been a mistake and a formal disciplinary hearing may have been more appropriate. We were duty-bound to ensure that the General Medical Council received a clear, transparent and accurate account of all the key evidence.
But Cathy Owens isn't unique. We've learnt of the case of another doctor, Hilary Cass, the former Deputy Medical Director of the hospital. Colleagues say she was hounded out by management after raising safety concerns relating to junior doctors. Both draw parallels with the case of whistleblower Kim Holt, who raised concerns at St Anne's. Great Ormond Street decided not to comment on Hilary Cass's case, but told us that she continues to develop specialist practice at the hospital.
Great Ormond Street is facing an emergency. I think that the chairman should ask the chief executive to produce a list of the consultants who've been disciplined, the ones who've left with a compromise agreement, the outstanding case they've got, look at that schedule and say, is there a pattern?
Great Ormond Street now has the Foundation Trust status it so wanted. It's got it despite these failings in child protection and concerns about patient safety. Some think it's a mistake to have given it this autonomy, this independence from government. So what next for this famous institution?
Great Ormond Street has just become a foundation trust. That means it's trusted to run its own affairs. This is an affair, it needs to run properly, and up to now they haven't shown that they've done that. They've done the opposite.
They are in the process of losing competent, well-qualified, well-trained consultants because of this whole attitude within the hospital. I'm extremely disappointed. I'm anxious about the future of the radiology department, but also of the whole of Great Ormond Street.
And who do you blame for that?
It must be at a senior level.